so bright, and it's good for everyone else, because then they can see me better. Okay, I didn't pour myself water yet.
Can I pour you some water?
Oh yeah, please, thank you. Okay. So we're starting. I should close the what's going on. The clock didn't start. So I'm wondering, why is the time not moving? I might have put the battery in backwards. Did I? No, maybe the battery is dead. Okay, let's see. There we go. Okay, now what time is it? Actually,
8:04.
8:04. Okay.
I got 8:05.
Okay,
Something
that's close enough. Okay, so I'm not sure who's watching with this. I'm guessing Al and maybe Katie. What's with this? Katie. All right. Okay, and we have Yosef joining us and Aryeh.
Amen.
And to my mother who watches every week, and everyone else who joins us, Shalom Aleichem. So it's really interesting where the class is going, because I never know. Every week, I did last night go over the whole lesson in Likutey Moharan, like through the abridged version, which I remember, Aryeh, you said a couple of times. Oh, there's your L. You'd like to see the abridged version. So I told you, the abridged version, which was written by Reb Nassim under Rabbi Nachman's instructions, is really for people who know the lesson and just kind of want to get cliff notes. But it's really hard to learn from the abridged version, the full lesson. I think what would be interesting is if the Oter Or did a translation of the abridged version with his commentary. I bet that would be really powerful. But on its own, it just kind of really gives you a very general direction of where the lesson is headed. So I'm sure there'll be parts that I skip over. We already skipped over a little bit when he got into some very heavy text proofs proving his point, and I felt like it was a little too much for me to handle. Just skipped over all that. But this section that we're going to learn tonight turned out to be a real surprise. I had no idea where Rabbi Nachman was going with this. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, what? Is that really what he's saying? And I was reading it over again and again, making sure. Baruch Hashem, I understand the Hebrew, which also kind of amazes me. I'm reading through this stuff and I really understand what he's saying here. And after all the lessons we've done, hundreds of lessons, literally, you start to get a feel for Rabbi Nachman's language and the concepts, and what I read is what he's saying. It's just a little strange. You're going to see tonight. So I want to dedicate the lesson to the Refuah Shlema of a few people: Aaron ben Chanaviba, Nachman ben China Rachel, and the Orachel Batzera Rivka, and everybody who needs a refuah, Bezrat Hashem, and for everyone needs Shalom Bayit and Parnasa, and to get married, and children, and healthy children, and all those things, Bezrat Hashem, and for the memory of Akiva Moshe ben Reuven, and Chasha Shifra Halevi, Akiva Goldberg, who passed away like a month and a half ago. Did you know Akiva? Lived in the neighborhood here?
Maybe by face.
Yeah, he was a drummer.
If I saw a picture of him, but not.
Okay. And he used to watch the lessons. He used to watch them afterwards. So after he passed away at 53. So for now, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll just keep dedicating the lessons in his memory. Who knows? Okay, so the nice thing for us is Baruch Hashem, the Oter Or. By the way, my English translation and the other version of the Likutey Moharan disappeared. I don't know where it is. Either somebody borrowed it and never returned it, or somewhere in the house, I don't know where. But I seem to be doing okay with the Hebrew here, and I printed up a translation from online. Between the two of them, we're figuring it out. One of the nice things in the other translations, they would summarize each section as we got to it, and here the Oter Or is summarizing it. So we're going to read the summary and get right into it. לאחר שביאר שכאשר האמונה נפגמת באות מכות מופלאות. So he says, after he clarified that when a person's emunah, when their faith in Hashem is damaged, then wondrous maladies or afflictions come upon a person. שלא מועיל להם לא רפואה ולא תפילה ולא זכות אבות וגם לא צעקת אח וגניחות. Doesn't help them that they daven, or that they take medication, or they go to a doctor, or have surgery, or any of those things. Davening, the merit of our ancestors, and not shouting out of ach, and genichot are deep sighs. Like all of these things. So this is also a list of effective prayers, things that help. The first thing on the list is to take an herb or a medication or do something. But after you do that, you've got to daven, and you have to ask your ancestors to daven for you, and you have to shout out to Hashem, and even this shouting out from this deep place doesn't help. Because the fixing for this is hu tza'akat halev, is the shouting out from the heart, which we mentioned in the previous class. Shouting out from the heart, which is a sound that doesn't make sound, a voice that doesn't make any sound. She'al yada mitgalot ha'etzot, that through that is revealed the advice. And he said before, the advice, the etzot, are the mitzvot. The mitzvot are, so he started the whole lesson by saying that the whole purpose of Judaism, the Jewish religion, is to connect a person to Hashem through emunah, through the mitzvot. The mitzvot are there to be a vessel for connecting to Hashem. I read an article, I print up all these articles for Shabbos. I don't have time during the week to read articles. So whatever looks interesting, also like really deep stuff, like philosophical or historical. You're always related to Israel, Zionism, the Jewish people. And there was some guy in Tablet magazine, he wrote, Why I Became a Jew. So I guess it's still left over from Shavuot. I also read this 10 pages of this round table with 10 converts. It was actually very interesting, even though some of them were a little crazy. And this guy said, because they were like Tablet magazine, they're trying to get every color, gender, mixed color, Orthodox. There was one Orthodox guy. Everyone else is like this, that, and everybody's saying all kinds of crazy things. This guy, it has the Spanish name, and apparently he worked for all these high-tech companies. He said, why did I become a Jew? And that was worth reading. The whole article was kind of a waste because he couldn't say things succinctly, because he said, life is confusing. And without some framework and direction, you're just lost. And he said, so I was looking for a framework and direction, and I found it in Judaism. And he said, once I found that, he said, it tells you how to mourn, it tells you how to eat, it tells you how to pray, it tells you how to keep Shabbos, it tells you what to wear, how to dress, how to behave. He said, in this crazy, chaotic world, I need that grounding religion. And that's essentially what Rabbi Nachman is saying in this lesson. What's the point of the Torah coming to the world is to give us the tools to be able to connect with Hashem. And you have to have emunah, you have to have faith in Hashem in order to do that. If a person just says, well, the Torah is man-inspired. My grandfather used to like to say that. One of my grandfathers. He said, yeah, I believe in the Torah, I believe in God, but the Torah is manly or whatever, however he said it, manly and godly inspired. But human beings wrote it. It wasn't from God. I think if you believe that, then why keep anything? I mean, lots of people wrote all kinds of interesting things. Just because this, I don't know, it didn't make sense to me and my arguments with him didn't help. But that's what he's saying. Emunah through the mitzvot. We're connecting to Hashem through the mitzvot. Shehem hamayim she'alehem gedela ha'emunah. That these are the waters on which faith grows, which is the tza'akat halev, which is the crying out to Hashem from the deepest place in your heart. And he mentioned also the mind gets confused by thinking. The heart has clarity. If you can settle your mind and listen to your heart, you can hear the clarity in it. So, for example, I'm guessing when people are trying to choose between one thing and another, and two of the options are the same, they're able to hear what's in their heart and choose the right thing. And a person has to connect themselves with the man of understanding, which is the true tzaddik, which is somebody like Rabbi Nachman, sheyitle v'yigale et ha'itzot. So this word yitle, which comes up in a little bit in the text here, I had to ask my wife, who's a native Hebrew speaker, what's this word? Yitle. So it shows up in the text as dole. So she said it comes from dli, which is a bucket. You know the word? I didn't know the word. It comes from a bucket, so you put the bucket in the water and you pull it out. So drawing out. So what is the ish tivunot? What does the tzaddik do? He draws out and reveals the etzot, advice. The ish tivunot umi shemetzachzeach et nishmato. This is somebody who has polished his soul. Umoshech ruchniut elokut letoch tzimtzumim. And is able to bring down pure godliness into the physical world, gufim, into physicality. Ubezeh hu borei behashkachatav hakdoshot briot chadashot shem guf and neshama. And through this is how God creates creatures, by taking a physical body and putting a spiritual soul into it. And so too the tzaddik can connect to godliness and bring it into this world in a way that we can't. And so when every time Hashem creates a new creature, He creates a double parnasa to support that creature, right? Which we see when a baby is born, the mother is able to breastfeed the baby. And anybody who has children, they know that somehow Hashem figures out the parnasa for the children. Not always in the way that you want it to be. But he mentions previously that having children is the ultimate level of faith in Hashem. Because if a person makes calculations, they say, listen, on our salary, we can only afford 2 kids. And they have 2 kids. And that's not having faith in Hashem. But if you say, look, Hashem, I'm having kids, and I'm going to rely on you to take care of the parnasa. I'm going to focus on raising the kids, and whenever I need parnasa, I'm going to come to you. That's a very high level of emunah. That's what Rabbi Nachman is saying. He says, do you want to know the highest level of emunah? That's probably it, having kids. Because also, kids, you can't go back. once they're there, you could be a terrible parent, but the kids are there. They're your kids. And the commitment to the kids is there. And when you have many kids, Yael likes mitzachzeach et nishmato. When you have many kids, so you have many expenses, and you really have no choice except to turn to Hashem. V'al yedei achilato lispoa nafshato, and through the tzaddik's eating to satiate his soul, shebezeh hu mitzachzeach et nishmato. This is how he polishes his soul. What that means is that even though the tzaddik is physically in this world, the tzaddik is connected to Hashem on a higher level than somebody who says, I'm just hungry. And through physicality is able to elevate the spirituality. So it's through the tzaddik that's on this level, he's able to reveal the advice that helps you to grow in your emunah, which is like the lessons that we're learning right now, for example. Now he's going to explain nefilat emunah naasot emunot kozviot, that through a lack of emunah or damaged emunah creates false emunah. Ve'al yedei shema'alim et ha'emunah hanefula na'asim gerim, and by elevating the fallen emunah, we make converts.
Can you go back and read the last part? With you said something about false emunah.
Yeah,
what is that?
Well, we're going to read about it now.
Gotcha.
That's exactly what we're going to read about. He says, a person's lack of faith in Hashem creates a type of false emunah. So Bar Kokhba, who led the rebellion against the Romans, what year was it? I don't remember. 66, whatever it was. So he was called by Rabbi Akiva Bar Kokhba. Bar Kokhba, the son of the stars. And after the rebellion that failed, also Rabbi Akiva said he was Mashiach. So Bar Kokhba was Mashiach. After the rebellion failed, he called him Bar Koziva, the master of lies. It was a false prophecy. So Kozviot is lying, shikriot. Okay, da she'al yedei nefilat ha'emunah, al yedei ze na'aseh v'nitchazek emunot kozviot, shikriot. So nefilat ha'emunah, nefilah is dropping down, falling down. A lack of emunah, I see Carlos joined the show. Through a lack of emunah, creates and strengthens these false beliefs. Emunot avodah zara v'chayotze. Belief in idol worship and the like. Perush, the meaning is, lo rak shechaser lo be'emunah. It's not just that a person is lacking emunah, ela na'aseh mizeh gam kfira gmora, but complete heresy comes about as a result of this. So you can say a person has a situation, they don't want to believe in Hashem, or they're not able to believe in Hashem because of the obstacles that they create in their own mind. But everybody has to believe in something, so they're going to believe in their coach, or their mother-in-law, or their friend, or Tony Robbins, or whatever comes up in the Facebook feed that inspires them. And so he says, not only are they lacking emunah, but they could lead to complete heresy. Kiteva Adam la'amin b'mashu, because the nature of human beings is to believe in something, right? The communists, when the Soviet Union existed, their religion was atheism. And they said, that was Marx. It said religion is the opium of the masses. But the communists also believed in something. They believed that that God doesn't exist. That's also a belief. How do you know that God doesn't exist? It's like somebody says to you, prove to me that God exists. And I don't remember which Rebbe it was that said, prove that he doesn't exist. You can't prove that he exists, and you can't prove that he doesn't exist. So whatever you believe, that he doesn't exist or he does exist, is a belief. Because there's no proof of either. If somebody can say, well, I don't see any proof of God. Look, where's God? If I talk with God, He doesn't answer me. That, first of all, that's not a proof. But somebody can go in the world and say, I don't see God at all. You can say to them, well, who's causing your heart to beat? You could stop your heart, right? You have free choice. You can do whatever you want. So stop your heart. And the person will say, well, that's just nature. It's just how it came about. Whatever it is, there's no absolute proof one way or the other. And you're going to have to decide what you believe in. And that's his point. That the nature of human beings is to believe in something. And so if a person has a lack of faith in Hashem, then it's going that the phrase that nature abhors a vacuum, that vacuum is going to be filled then by false beliefs. As it's written in Yechezkel, that I was filled up, I will be filled, she has been laid waste. With the Shu Chazal the Megillah, and our sage of blessed memory said in Megillah, Ksheze kam ze nofel v'chulei. So when one falls, the other comes up. So we know the yin and yang type of thing. So if you're not believing in Hashem, you're going to believe in something else. And if you're not believing in that, you're going to either believe in something else or you're going to believe in Hashem. But you're always going to believe in something. There's no one that doesn't believe in anything. And even the person says that I don't believe in anything is believing that they don't believe in anything. It's just like there's no person that doesn't breathe. And there's no person that doesn't think. There are people in a vegetative state, but that's not the normal state of a human being. Everybody who's normal thinks. So your thoughts are going to go somewhere. When this one goes up, that one goes down. Uksha kedusha noferet hatuma mitgaberet. So when connection to holiness goes down, the connection to impurity goes up. V'chein lehefech, and so it is the opposite. Right? You just take a person who's very healthy. They're running, they're eating, they're healthy, and now they want to stop exercising. They start eating fried food all the time and start smoking. They're going to cause damage to their body. But the same thing, if a person that's smoking and not exercising and eating unhealthy stops smoking, starts eating healthy, and starts exercising, they're going to see it in the opposite direction as well. They're going to get healthy. The same thing with connecting to Hashem. The more you connect with Hashem, the more you'll be connected to Hashem. The less you're connected to Hashem, the less you'll be connected to Hashem, and you get to decide which direction you're going to go. Ki ikar kiyum v'chizuk emunat kozviot, hainu koach yenikata me'akdusha. So, he says, in the main way that false belief exists and is strengthened, that is the power that it, where does the power of false beliefs come from? It draws its sustenance from Kedusha, from holiness. So everything draws its sustenance from Kedusha. Why, when you have some powerful force in the world, some type of idol worship, for example, its strength is coming from the Kedusha. It's just not being channeled into the Kedusha. The power of holiness is now being given over to the power of idol worship.
Can we just define like false truths? Is it anything other than God?
Anything other, in our example, it's anything other than Torah, mitzvot, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
So anything else you basically make up in your mind, or anything else?
We're not talking about like science. Like we're talking about how do you connect to the world, right? It's like if you know that blood flows through the body, but a person says, "Listen, I don't believe that blood flows through the body. I just believe that God does everything." So, okay, God does everything, but God made a place where blood flows through the body. So we're not talking about that. We're saying you now have a problem, whatever problem it is in your life, and you don't know how to deal with this problem. Are you going to turn to Hashem, or are you going to say this is something that Hashem can't do? That's really what he's saying. If you choose Hashem, you've chosen emunah. And if you say Hashem can't do this, then you've chosen a false belief. This, by saying that Hashem can't do this, for example, I have a lot of debt, and I say Hashem can never pay this debt off. Could never happen. I'm just going to have to go and hustle and not ask Hashem for anything, because I don't believe that Hashem can do this. Or somebody who's not married. I've met many single people that tell me, I'll never get married. And I say to them, well, what do you think Hashem is doing since the sea split? That's what Hashem is doing. He's making shidduchim. And for Hashem, you think that Hashem can't do whatever it is? I don't remember who it was. I think it was on Shabbos. I don't remember when. Somebody said to me, bless me that I should be able to pay the rent on my apartment. So I said, I bless you that you should buy a house and pay the mortgage. And the person said, wow, I never thought of that. I said, well, if you're already asking Hashem to help you pay the rent, ask Hashem to buy you a house. Hashem's not limited by these things. The only limitation is our thinking. And those of us that didn't grow up with a house that was pure emunah and faith in Hashem, and that's just the natural way that we think, so we like to look at the stock market, or think that if we get a better job or a better car or something, that will solve some problem for us. That I would say would be an emunah, a kozevit, like a false belief. What you need, you ask Hashem for, and you trust Hashem to give it to you. You do whatever you have to do, but you ask Hashem for everything. The easiest way to build emunah is to ask Hashem for everything. Meaning, and I always bring it down to a paper cut. If I get a paper cut, do I ask Hashem to heal me, or do I say, Hashem, this one I can handle? Whatever, you take care of the world, making hamburgers and hot dogs and whatever it is you do in your factory upstairs. This little paper cut, it's on me. That's where you build emunah. You say, no, Hashem, heal the paper cut. Hashem, heal this and heal that, and give me this and give me that for good reasons that you're asking to in order to fulfill your purpose. So that's the meaning of false belief. So he says, where does the power of the false beliefs come from? It comes from kedusha, it comes from holiness. Ad shehem yecholot lehatot bnei adam, until they can fool people, ki'ilo yesh behem mamish, as if that belief, that false belief, is really the truth. And this comes from a lack of true faith in Hashem. Because when people fall from their faith in Hashem, they give power to false beliefs to get stronger. And when we elevate the fallen beliefs through the advice that comes from the depths that the tzaddik, the man of understanding, draws out and reveals to us, umitchazeket ha'emunah etzel b'nei Yisrael, and this strengthens the faith amongst the Jewish people. Mizeh na'asim gerin ba'olam. From this is where we get converts in the world. Ki alidei shenilkatin v'nivarin nitzotzot hakodesh shel nefilat ha'emunah kedusha, because through gathering up and clarifying or purifying the holy sparks that have fallen from the true faith in Hashem, from pure faith in Hashem. So you understand, everybody has these moments where they doubt Hashem for something. I'm assuming I'll talk for myself. I have moments where I doubt Hashem for things, and then I will catch myself. But that creates a spark, as it were, of fallen faith. And when this fallen faith is collected, it creates converts. This is what he's saying. That's why I said, I'm reading this. I'm like, really? Am I reading this right? Umisham yenikata emunatam hakozvit al yedei ze nechlash koach emunatam. And from there, they draw sustenance from false beliefs, and through this is weakened their faith. So we're talking about the converts. The converts, you take somebody who believes in Christianity, for example. And I've met Christians that converted to Judaism. and you ask them what happened, they said, I thought about it, and I thought, a son of God? What kind of crazy idea is that? Why would anyone need a son of God? Why did God give birth to a son? And I started thinking, and I'm thinking all about Christianity and how the whole thing is based on this Son of God. And I came to the realization that it's just a big lie. This is what these people have told me themselves. Many times I've heard this. This is exactly what he's saying here. That these false beliefs create a lack of emunah, and through them, it creates converts who say, wait a minute, we're believing in the wrong thing. Kikon kochan hu mima shehem yonkot minitzatzot akdusha shenaflu alehem. Because all of the power of the false beliefs in the world draw their sustenance from the holy sparks that have fallen from people's lack of faith in Hashem. She'az yesh lehem koach lehatot b'nei adam ki'ilu yesh behem emet. That's why there's the power to trick and fool people, trip up people, by making them think that these false beliefs were real and have real power. Aval ha-kozviot aval mitrabe ha-emunah b'Yisrael b'chinat aliyat emunah. But when the Jewish people strengthen their faith in Hashem, they elevate their faith in Hashem, nilkatim v'nivarim netzatzot hakdusha halalu mehem, then these fallen sparks of lack of emunah are collected up. Ve'emunah kozvit nechleshet ki ein la mehechan linok. And then the false belief becomes weak because it doesn't have any place to draw its sustenance from. V'lo yechola lahatot et haolam. And then it can't fool the world. Va'azai heim umot haolam. And then they, the nations of the world, chozrim le'emunatenu hakdusha, return to our holy belief in God, ki mitgale lehem hasheker shebe'emunatam v'na'asim gerim, because it's revealed to them the lie in what they believe in, and that's where converts come from. Fascinating. I'd never heard this before. Obviously, that's why we're learning from Rabbi Nachman. Mislead. Thank you, Yael. That's what I was saying before. Whereas mislead, that they mislead is the word. Okay, just keep going. ולפעמים על ידי עליית האמונה נעשים גרים בכוח, ולפעמים נעשים גרים בפועל. And sometimes through, when there's like this elevation of emunah. So here I'll give you an example. The 1967 war. So there's May 1967 and there's June 1967. In May 1967, Israel thought another Holocaust is coming. Gan Saker was dug up to be a mass grave. Did you know that? It was dug to be a mass grave to bury tens of thousands of people. Also in Tel Aviv, they were digging graves to bury all the people that were going to die in the 1967 war. After the war, which happened in 6 days, so now we're in May, now we're in June. June, all of a sudden, the whole world is celebrating these Jews. Where did fighting Jews come from? Since ancient times, Jews have been weak and destroyed and put down by everyone. And Jews had no rights. And now the Jews conquered all of the Arab armies, backed by the Soviet Union. How could it be? And all of a sudden, the world loves Israel. There's so much support for Israel. There was never so much support, probably ever, since the state existed, and hasn't been since then. This is what he's talking about here. He says, so there's this false belief that the Jewish people are going to have a Holocaust happen to the land of Israel. And when they see that it's wrong, all of a sudden the nations of the world change their way of seeing things and see things differently. And he's talking about specifically when it comes to the Jewish people. And I'm sure there are many converts that converted because of the 1967 war, the victory of the war. They saw it and they said, I want to be part of that people. So sometimes we get actual converts, and sometimes you get converts bekoach, is what he's calling it, which would be like impotential. Meaning somebody who says, I want to convert, but they haven't actually converted. But it still affects them. היינו שנעשים גרים ממש בפועל, שבאים שבאים akum goyim umitgerim. Sometimes it's people that actually come from amongst the non-Jewish nations and they actually convert. Or sometimes it's just in potential. That through elevating the fallen faith that was weakened by people's lack of faith, then all of a sudden it's revealed to them the holy faith in Hashem, the true faith in Hashem. Sham b'makom shehem, and they believe in the place where they are, sheyesh yachid kadmon yitbarach, that they believe that there is one God that runs the whole everything, and this is the God that has existed forever. B'pchinat ha'katuv, ki mimizach shemesh ad mevu'o, gadol shmi bagoyim. And he gives a quote from Malachi that from the east, the sun rises up, and till my name is known amongst the non-Jewish nations of the world. B'chol makom muktar umudgash l'shmi. In every place is my name is known and announced and stressed. Ki shekorim lekadosh baruch hu elokei elokim, ve'afilu mi she'oved avodah zara yodea sheyesh elokim me'an kulam. That there's a God of all gods. And even somebody who worships idols knows that there's a power that's above the idol. And also the non-Jewish nations are willing to give their lives for Hashem. Okay, so now I want to just I'll read this paragraph because then we'll get to the next section, and I'm going to explain how this is related to the whole lesson. And this is if we have actual converts or converts in potential. Depending on whether a person becomes somebody who thinks about converting or actually converts, depends on how strong their false belief was beforehand. Hainu, that is to say, emunah kozviot hayta chazaka betchila, when their false belief was strong in the beginning, azay achar kach shemishabrim ota umaalim et emunah nefula dekdusha misham naaseh gerim. So let's say I have a friend who was a missionary. He's from Holland. And he was like the number one missionary in Holland. And he became a convert. And he called himself Kalev, of course. Right from one of the spies that didn't speak badly about the land of Israel. And he would tell me, like he enjoyed telling stories about how they picked him after years and years of him doing converting people from other religions. They said the Jews are the most important people to convert. And when he heard that the Jews were so important and he saw they were putting millions of dollars into converting Jews, he said, I want to be a Jew. Like he realized, wait a minute, I'm trying to bring those people to me? What am I, an idiot? I want to be the one that people are spending millions of dollars on. So he became a Jew. But he said, why is it so important for us to convert Jews? He said, because we know that we have a problem. The Jews were alive in the time of our Messiah, and they didn't accept him. So how can we be accepting him? We were the heathens. The Jews were actually there. If he was really the Messiah, then the Jews had to accept him. And so until all the Jews accept him, they haven't created, whatever perfection in the world, so they're obsessed with converting us all. That's what he told me is the source of it. So what he's saying here is if a person starts with this very strong belief beforehand, and they come to the conclusion that the belief is wrong, then they'll be able to come to actually converting because they came from such a strong place. Azai na'asim gerim before mamish, which is what I just said. Emunah kozviot lo eta chazaka kol kach b'tchila, but if a person's false belief wasn't so strong in the beginning, then when it's broken and it turns into holiness, then the person doesn't convert, they just have the potential to convert. Ki emunat sheker chazaka novat miyinikat gedola mekedusha, because the strong false belief comes from drawing a great deal of sustenance from holiness. We know that everything zelumat zeasa, everything that is good, there's bad, and everything there's an equal amount of good and an equal amount of bad. So when they're right, the non-Jews can say, "Well, you Jews had Moshe Rabbeinu. What about us? Didn't we deserve a prophet?" So we had Bilam, who was said to be the equivalent of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he was on the level of prophecy like Moshe Rabbeinu. The non-Jews have it, the Jews have it. Whatever the Jews have, the non-Jews have. And if anybody looks at the Jewish people and says, "Hey, it's not fair. You were given the Torah. You're the chosen people to be God's representatives here on earth. How come you got to and I didn't get to?" So the answer is, you're welcome to convert. You can join us. You can be one of us if you really want. ולכן כשנשברים אותה ומעלים מאמונה כוזבית את ניצוצות הקדושה, so when this person's belief is broken, their false belief is broken, and it's elevated from the holy sparks, נפילתה גדולה וחזקה, והגויים מתעוררים להיות גרים בפועל. And this causes somebody such a strong inspiration, they actually become a convert. But when there was just a weak drawing from the holiness, even when that false belief is broken, they don't identify so much that they'll actually become converts, but rather they acknowledge Hashem in His place, and this is potential converts. Meaning, I guess the Noachites would be an example of that. Okay, so now how is this related? We didn't get to the continuation of this.
There's the false belief of the non-Jews, which leads to the conversion of the non-Jews.
Yeah.
Where do the Jews fit into that again?
That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say this. Well, so the Jews, and that's the point of the lesson.
Okay.
When we stop believing in Hashem and we believe in Bertie Madoff, for example, or whatever it is, I'm trying to find a good example, and nothing's coming to mind, but you know what I'm talking about. All of us, or I have to say myself, there are times when I'll get like a bill from the city hall and my heart skips a beat from seeing how much money I have to pay. And that happened to me with the IRS. So the IRS sent me a bill for $100,000. This is like in 2010. And what do? So I called my accountant and he said, "You're dead." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "No, people actually die from the stress of this. They get divorced, they have heart attacks, they die." So I'm like, "Okay, you're not my accountant anymore." And I was really facing this problem. Now, a person that doesn't believe in Hashem, they'll just say, "Look, Hashem's in the shul. Hashem is on Shabbos, whatever. I have to just deal with my problem, and I don't even ask Hashem to help me." That's the false belief. That's the false belief for a Jew.
And when a Jew has false belief, what is that? Does that translate into something to do with conversion, or that's only?
Yeah. So that creates a spark.
Okay.
That's a fallen belief. That's not something we can see physically, but it's in the spiritual world. And when those sparks are collected together, they so when the Jewish people, for example, I guess after the 67 war, all of a sudden believed in miracles, now the whole world it kind of collects all the false beliefs in the world, and there's no place for the false beliefs to pull sustenance from. So an example would be, I guess, a greater awareness of Hashem in the world. And I think the 6-Day War is a good example.
How would we describe just like the process? The process is a bunch of Jews have false beliefs in Bernie Madoff and the IRS and things of that nature.
Right. Meaning that they just don't talk to Hashem. They don't ask Hashem to help them. Because they don't believe in Hashem. They don't believe that Hashem can help them with this.
God forbid that happens, and then that creates sparks of false emunah.
And that increases the false beliefs in the world.
And that increases the false beliefs in the world, and false beliefs in the world then at some point in the future then kind of are gathered and then become either the potential or the actual converts themselves.
Well, there's one step you're missing there. So when the Jewish people all of a sudden have less false beliefs and more beliefs in Hashem, it changes the balance in the world.
So the previous false beliefs after...
They're actually collected up, like a vacuum cleaner, going around collecting all the false beliefs that the Jewish people put in the world. Now all of a sudden the non-Jews don't have the same false beliefs because the power of the false beliefs comes from Kedusha. And if the Jews took that power away by now having faith in Hashem, so the whole world is going to see the Hashem in a different way. And people that believed in false beliefs very strongly still have to believe in something very strongly. But the sustenance that they were drawing from the Kedusha is gone. So now they start believing in the real thing, and that sometimes brings people to actually converting.
So there's false beliefs which kind of perpetuate false beliefs, and then when the Jewish people kind of realize that the false beliefs are false beliefs and they do tshuva, or they kind of see that there's a tshuva from Hashem, like the 6-day war, then the aftermath of, let's say, the realization that the false beliefs were false beliefs is that all of those false beliefs now are sucked up in the vacuum, and they serve to bring about this kind of global awareness of Hashem, which creates converts and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay.
That's where, I guess, waves of converts would come from. But now there's a point to our whole lesson here. So let's take the example of the IRS. Had I said, well, the accountant is right, and I better just bat what is called something to hatch down the batches, or batch down the hatches, or whatever the phrase is. You don't hear these phrases for 30 years, don't remember them. But there's something like, close the windows and get ready for the storm to come. And I never even ask Hashem to help me. I never even say, Hashem, please help me. My accountant's not going to help me, so you help me. That's exactly what I did. So I said, look, I'm a smart person. How hard can it be to answer questions from the IRS? I said, Hashem, you're running the world. Every time for a year and a half, I had a monthly meeting with this guy. And every time before I answered the phone, I would say, Hashem, you're running the world. And as I'm talking with him, I would sometimes put down the phone and say, Hashem, you're running the world. And I'd answer the questions. And I was always in this mindset of Hashem, you're running the world. Now that might have meant that I had to pay $100,000. Didn't mean that I wouldn't have to pay it. But how was I connecting with this test? That's the point of this. And that's the reason that he's bringing this section about the converts. He's saying the power of our belief in Hashem is so strong that it actually affects the whole world. To the point that we have converts that converted because they came to the conclusion that they were believing in something false, basically because you decided to believe in Hashem. When a Jew eats a piece of bread, we say Birkat HaMazon. What do we say in Birkat HaMazon? Hashem, you created the whole world. All I did was eat a piece of bread. Do you understand the connection? When a Jew eats a piece of bread, he says a prayer, Hashem, you created the whole world. That's how powerful a Jew eating a piece of bread is. We forget because, especially in this day and age, it's easy for people to not even know you're a Jew. I look like a Jew. I don't know. Somebody might mistake me for a Muslim in America. I have no idea. I think I look like a Jew. But if I didn't wear a kippah, shaved my beard, didn't have tzitziot, changed my glasses, I couldn't possibly pass. I don't know if I could pass as a non-Jew. But many Jews can pass as non-Jews. And it's very easy to just be an American and live your life. And Judaism is like my hobby on the side. And that affects the world. And the opposite as well. When the Jew says, no, I'm embracing my religion, I'm following halacha, and I'm having faith in Hashem, it also affects the world. And that's the point of this, is that when he started the whole lesson, and he said the whole purpose of the Torah is to help Jews have emunah, he's giving us this crazy example, which I guess he goes a little deeper into it in the next part. I guess it was important for Rabbi Nachman to say. It just shows you the power of our emunah. And so if you take that one step further, that means that when you're having a test in life, understand that your emunah has real power. So much so that it can even create converts and affect the balance of the world. Which blew my mind when I read that. Because he writes it in a way where it's not written like that. But when you read the words and you say, wait, what is he saying here? That's what he's saying. That's why I wish Rabbi Nachman had stuck around longer and refined his stuff, brought it down to a lower level like we're doing. But I guess we're getting there on our own.
Was he late 30s or 40?
38. He was also he was on such a high level, I don't know if he could have brought this stuff down. It's one of the issues that I have with the Tanya, that it's written on a very high level and it's hard to relate to. Also, Likutey Moharan is very hard to relate to, but when you see what we did today, when you break down what he's saying and you relate it back to the point of the lesson, all of a sudden you get something that you can live off of. Where he says, your emunah is so strong, it affects the balance of the world. So when you're having a test from the bank, or whatever problems you might have, know that emunah is super strong. It makes a difference. It can even bring non-Jews to become Jews, which you would think is insane, especially in Rabbi Nachman's time. Now, there's you can go on YouTube and you can see videos of people that are telling their story of how they became a Jew. But in Rabbi Nachman's time, if you became a Jew, your citizenship might have been taken away. You would be disowned by your family. You might have been killed for it. Being a Jew wasn't easy back then. Now it's trendy.
Yeah, there's an interesting, actually African-American couple that they have a YouTube channel talking about their conversion.
There you go. So that wouldn't happen in the old days. If anybody became a Jew and they were from a well-known family, they had to hide and run to another country and hope nobody discovered them. That's, what's his name? Wow. Graf Potapsky, I think is his name. It's a story on Shavuot to the Baal Shem Tov, and the long story short, this guy who was a nobleman converted. He ended up going to Amsterdam and then coming back, and at one point the Jews in the community knew that he was a convert, and the guy shushed them during davening, and the guy turns around and says, "Who are you to tell me to be quiet? You're this previous nobleman who was a convert." And word got out, and the Polish government or whoever it was, they burned him for becoming a Jew. And the Baal Shem Tov said that this guy's neshama stood next to his at Mount Sinai. That's a long story short. So it's a whole long, drawn-out story. You can read about it. But that's when people say today, "Oh, it's no big deal to become a Jew. You can go to, you can probably become a Jew online. I'm guessing $500, maybe even less. Fill in some form and some rabbi somewhere will sprinkle some pixie dust and make you a Jew." And I'm sure that people have done it for their mother-in-law or whatever. But to become a Jew in Rabbi Nachman's time was a matter of life and death. And that's why conversions today are much more problematic than they were back then. Back then, anyone who actually converted was crazy, and they really wanted to be a Jew. Otherwise, there was no way they were going to convert. They're giving up too much. Now, it's a whole different world, and that's why we have all these crazy problems. So I just wanted to share a very short story about Baal Shem Tov. There's actually two stories of him doing this. So one time, there were two Hasidim, and one guy says, I hate you so much, I want to rip you to pieces like a piece of fish. That was, I guess, a phrase in Yiddish, I don't know. The Baal Shem Tov puts his hand on the Chassid next to him. He says, make a circle. Everybody puts their hands on everybody's shoulders and makes a circle. He says, close your eyes. They close their eyes and they start screaming, because obviously they didn't have violent movies back then. They saw a vision of the guy actually ripping this other guy limb by limb like a piece of fish. So that's the first story. The second one is there were these simple Jews, and this is a fascinating thing which you don't really see today. I don't think I've ever seen it today. Like the woodcutters and the water carriers, they would come and say Tehillim in the morning and evening. They would sit there and say Tehillim. A lot of times they couldn't read, so they would say Tehillim by heart. You see how the Sephardi minions, the Edot HaMizrach minions work, where everybody says the davening out loud. I'm guessing that comes from because people weren't able to read. And also we have Shemona Esrei, of course, we do Chazarat Hashatz, because not everybody knew the davening. That's the reason for it. We have it written in the Siddur. Why do we have to say it out loud again? It's still a tradition from when people didn't know the davening. So you would have these simple people that would be reading, saying Tehillim. And one time some of the Chassidim of the Baal Shem Tov, they said to him, Rebbe, why do you give so much attention to these simple people? They're simple. We're intellectuals, we're intelligent, we know the Shas, and we know everything, Zohar, and all this. And why do you spend so much time with them? And he said, you see them saying Tehillim? And they said, yeah, we can also say Tehillim. He said, yeah, but do you know what their Tehillim sounds like in heaven? And he takes his hand and he puts it on one chassid and they make a circle. And they hear these beautiful angelic voices singing. And they never heard harmonies, they never heard singing like that in their whole lives. The Baal Shem Tov takes his hands off of the chassid next to him, and the singing stops, and he says, you see, that's the sound that their Tehillim is making. Because these simple Jews, you guys, you understand what you're doing. If I say to you, why do you wash your hands before you eat bread? You know. But these Jews, they don't know. They just know that that's what they're supposed to do, so they do it. And the Baal Shem Tov always wanted to serve Hashem like a simple Jew. That was always his goal. And really, ultimately, that's the goal of the mitzvot. You want to understand them, but you want to do them from the place of the simple Jew. Bezat Hashem. Okay, so Shukach, everyone for joining us. And continue next week. Bezat Hashem.